What was considered to be a wildlife phenomenon of seeing geese fly overhead, and what Aldo Leopold talks about, the return of the geese in the A Sand County Almanac, which is this romantic notion of a wild animal that is really a magnificent species, is very different in people's minds now. When I first started working at Edgewood, I'd ride my bike through Vilas Park. I would never see geese in Vilas Park. There were no urban populations, a few decades ago. That began to change in the 80s and then more in the 90s. Now we have a resident goose population, a summer resident population. That is the adults and the offspring of those adults that stay in Vilas Park for the entire summer. They're impacting not only the use of the park for obvious reasons, but apparently substantially to nutrient and bacteria loading in the beach area, contributing to the closure of the beach.
How long can E. coli or fecal coliform survive in sand? We found not only can it survive, but it actually multiplies. So then when you get a good rainstorm, it would just wash that right through the sand and into the beach, and you'd have a nice inoculum that would last 2 or 3 days in the beach after a storm. That particular experiment that we did in the 70s has been redone many, many times all over the country, all over the world for that. I swam at Vilas Park as a teenager. My kids learned to swim at Vilas Park. The lifeguards would do swimming classes, and it's an important recreational community thing. If you live in that area, you need to get on the beach, you need to get out on the water and look back at the city from that water perspective. That's what defines Madison, is our lakes. And the goal is to have like 4 to 6 geese for the Vilas Park area, and right now we have 400 to 600 geese. At this point, there is consensus that 4 to 6 geese is a good number. Where we don't have consensus yet is how we get down to that number. And at Vilas Park, there's a number of initiatives that we're all discussing. One is, of course, a geese control program where it could be just harassing the geese to keep them out of the beach area. You can use dogs or other devices to scare the geese away from Vilas Park, but all you do is you move them to a different beach or a different area where they're going to become problematic. And you can oil the eggs or shake the eggs, and the bird will sit on those eggs, and rather than if you destroy the eggs, they'll just lay another batch, but they'll sit on those eggs and then it'll be a failure. All the way up to the other end would be a roundup, collecting these geese and taking them to a food pantry as ground goose burger. But once again, a goose lives 20 to 30 years. So before you see any effect of that is 20 or 30 years down the line. So if we're talking about cleaning up the beaches for my grandchildren who want to use them now, we really need to do a harvest.
I don't know if I really have any comment on the inherent wildness of the birds, though. They're just adapted to a situation that's working for them.